Thank you. That to listen to you talk tonight is like a miracle, like a voice to me, because Lily Tang Williams, I was born in China, and I was enjoying my life, living American dream, and then wake up to say this country is becoming like the country I just left. They follow me here, like you said, equity, communist term, ESG, China social credit system. But the thing is, though, we have been screaming out of our lungs as immigrants to warn people. They are here, they infiltrate into our country, we have enemies within, and now we have globalists are working with China on ESG, on all kinds of stuff. They're not elected by us. So what would you suggest at the state level versus the federal level, what we can do to counter-strike that? Of course, with the free market too, to work together. This is a year for people to wake up. We just saw the magic balloon, right? So everybody talking about China now. But it's a test. It's a test on America's response. Yeah.
It was a trial balloon in the literal sense. Absolutely.
But we have the worst phone, like a balloon. It's in our kids' cell phone called a TikTok. that cannot be ignored. So what are you suggest the state level what we can do, and the federal legislation, Congress level what we can do?
The first thing I want to say about you, Lily, I had a chance to meet Lily yesterday, is that in my mind, she is an embodiment of this word we bandy around a lot in our movement called courage. Okay. Courage means two things. It means having conviction and being willing to make a sacrifice to act out and live your convictions. The first part, many of us do well. The second part is hard. Lily and I share something in common. She and I cannot go to China. The difference between Lily and I is I don't have family in China, she does. She is making a sacrifice to speak the way she is, to act on her convictions, and that's what I call courage. And sometimes it takes someone coming into this country, like my parents or like you, to see what you otherwise, well, my kids, frankly, will just be able to take for granted and inherit. And you don't always value something that you inherit. You only value something you have a stake in building. And so the question is, what do we do? Okay, I'll leave you with a quote from one of my favorite Republicans, my favorite Republican, certainly of all time, spoke 160 years ago. That's Abraham Lincoln, who famously said, at the height of the Civil War in 1863, the dogmas of a quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Okay, I say the dogmas of 1980 are inadequate to address the unique challenges that we face in the year 2023. The reason Ronald Reagan was my hero, okay, it was not because he slashed taxes and government regulations and ushered in an era of prosperity, whose fruits we continue to enjoy to this day, by the way. Those things are great. The thing that made him remarkable was that he stood up to the orthodoxies in his own party to do what needed to be done in his moment. And I think that's what our conservative movement needs to celebrate the legacy of Reagan, not by just reciting the slogans, but by marshaling that spirit of looking with fresh eyes at the moment and the unique challenges that we face and come up with unique solutions that actually rise to that occasion. And I will say things that I would not have said 10 years ago, that we should ban addictive social media products, at least in kids who are under the age of 16. Why is that not at the top of I don't think about a conservative agenda, pro-American agenda? I would believe in getting rid of civil service protections in this country that create a government that lends itself to capture if you have a permanent administrative state. And as much as I respect even the people who have done the best job, even a prior president, our last president, who highlighted this more clearly than anybody else, complaining to the press about it is not enough. A belief in Article 2 authority to say that if you're the constitutionally elected president of the United States, you're going to do what you're constitutionally empowered to do. The next time there's an Anthony Fauci or Merrick Garland or James Comey, you do what the president's constitutionally empowered to do. You fire them, you fire the legions of people under them, and you fire the managerial industrial complex around them. unshackle ourselves from the dogma, and I think new possibilities await. That's where I'm at.
Great, we're going to take a question right here, but while you're walking over with the mic, I just want to let you know that Fred Ward, he was with Abraham Lincoln when he said that. And he can quote verbatim. Thank you, Fred. But we're going to have a question here, and then you can talk.
Okay.
So you can be next, Fred. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your time, thanks for hosting. So I don't want to get too close to the conspiracy ledge, but I'll get close to it. So the E is the environmental and the ESG, and you talked about Davos and the WHO, the so-called leaders of the WHO. They want us, one of the bigger issues for them is to reduce our carbon footprint, not them, right? But I'm wondering if anything during your research has come across your desk with some meat on the bones that may have talked about the other thing that they believe should happen, which is depopulation. They believe that the earth is overpopulated, right? Anything that may be worth discussing?
So this is all part of the climate change movement. This is going to make a lot of people mad, not in this room, but in my circles, okay? It is just part of this global degrowth movement. It is an illusion, okay? Tell you a couple, you want to talk about facts, follow the science. So let's follow the science, follow the facts. How many, if you think about climate change, why do we care about climate change if for no other reason than the impact that it has on human beings? We're talking about the impact it has on human beings. Let's measure that impact. One thing you might start with is the death rate from climate-related disasters, okay? This is internationally undisputed. You won't hear it, but nobody's going to dispute this fact. For every 100 people that died of a climate-related disaster in the year 1920, how many of them died in the year 2020? One. Okay? 98 to 99% reduction in climate-related disaster death rate. Why is that? Was it through the use of less fossil fuels? No, it was powered by fossil fuels through the buildings and the heating systems and the temperature and the cooling systems and the temperature control systems that we have. And by the way, this one makes a lot of people mad. 8 times as many people die of actually the wrong temperature-related deaths, right? Cold temperature rather than warm temperatures. And the best answer to all temperature-related deaths is actually more abundant access to, you guessed it, fossil fuels. So you don't have a fact-based debate about the science, the WHO, technocratic class, great, let's have it. Let's talk about human impact. But what this is really lurking beneath, what is lurking beneath this agenda is not only that it's neutral to human flourishing, but that it is actually anti-human at its core. My friend Alex Epstein speaks about this brilliantly. It is a global degrowth movement that isn't a conspiracy theory. And you'll hear this term bandied about a lot, conspiracy theory. There's one version of the conspiracy theory that's like the kind you watch in a movie where people are actually getting together in a smoke-filled room and then plotting it out and then foisting it on you. It doesn't happen that way in the real world, not most of the time. It's what I call emergent conspiracy. It's the same facts laid out, and it just happens in slow motion in plain sight. It's not even hiding. I'll give you one of them right now. So can you imagine that we were in that conference room before, okay? Closed door, no windows. Imagine we were the CEOs of Exxon, Shell, ConocoPhillips, BP, and you know, pick your favorite 5th biggest energy company in the world. Okay, pick a U.S. energy company, Marathon Energy. And we decided behind closed doors, cigar-filled room, that we were going to slash oil production and then prices spike at the pump as a result. That would be the conspiracy that we would arrest people over. It's price fixing. Classic antitrust violation. But now, go to the front page of the Climate Action 100 Plus network. Okay, it's $68 trillion worth of asset managers that have signed a pledge. It's on the front page of their website that they're committing to effectively pressure those firms and firms like them to do the same thing. That's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy reality. It's just an emergent reality that's actually the way the conspiracy presents itself in the real world. And again, I come back to knowledge is actually our source of empowerment. We don't need to do it. It's not through violence. It's not through physical force. We empower ourselves with that knowledge. But you're right, just like the other side I said in the answer to the woke question, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's the first step to our path forward.
Great. Let's have Fred, then we'll go to Warren.
I'm a meteorologist, and I got involved in this thing back in the 1960s. That's not what I want to ask. I find that sometimes when a thing is crazy, that rather than answer it directly, you make fun of it. And so I'd like to ask you a question. Is there a difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion, and diversity, inclusion, and equity? One is DEI, the other is DIE. I might suggest that if we called it DIE, we would maybe eliminate a lot of it.
I like that. DEI, DIE. Yeah, I'm going to start calling it that. I like it. Thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. But are you sure that wasn't 1860?
No, I was working with you back then.
I'll get you next time. Warren.
So I want to go back to the woke thing for a second and take a little back kind of return. My generation grew up in the Disney era, and those fundamental family and truth and the pillars that he, for the most part, and there's a lot of controversy, but he was putting out in the early days, things that we could feel great about America in, have come to now our grandchildren's generation, where I saw yesterday a trailer of a new cartoon for CRT. I don't know if anybody else saw it. And it made me, disgusted, but because we cannot trust any aspect of Disney to be in favor of anything that is basically American anymore. And we have to be willing, like the Americans that became Americans in the 1700s, to give up the manufactured goods from England. We have to be willing, and then my question to you is, how do we do it? To give up the Disney addiction and turn it off. Because we can't stop them from airing it on their own station.
Warren, tell them what it was about.
Well, okay. A gay couple, men, are arguing, and the black male is saying, well, Lincoln it's all a lie about Lincoln. He actually didn't free the slaves. He would only free the slaves in the South, but didn't free them in the North, and all these other things. And eventually turned around with a white male partner says, I'm so ashamed for being white. And that is the theme of the whole, is that they want retribution for being black. For 150, 175 years of 120, 250 other nationalities coming to America and building America and saying, the blacks built America, not the whites. And it isn't whites and blacks, it's browns and yellows and reds and Indians and all races of the world that flooded the gates when Statue of Liberty said, bring me your home.
So Warren, can you get back to what the question was?
What do you do? My question is, what do we do with this powerhouse of media? Is it just being that willing to just turn it off? Is that
So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be unappreciative.
No, this is good. The color actually helped there. Thank you for that. So media is the toughest frontier to tackle. But I'll tell you, there's top-down solution and a bottom-up solution, and I think we need both. Neither one's going to be easy. The top-down solution is, I'm going to tell you a fun fact about Disney. I actually wrote a shareholder letter to Disney and their board questioning their governance and oversight of Bob Chapek, who made the politicized decisions that got the company into a hole last year. Funny fact about Disney is, you look at, of course, their top shareholders on that top list is none other than BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Now, you would assume that in a free market, but in a free market, what would you expect? Competition. So this is a great opportunity for who are Disney's competitors. So let's look up who are Disney's competitors. Paramount Pictures. Well, who owns Paramount Pictures? Paramount Global. Who are the top shareholders of Paramount Global? BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. That operates at theme parks. Universal Studios. Let's see. Who operates Universal Studios? Well, Universal Studios is a jointly owned subsidiary of General Electric and Comcast. Then you look at who are the top shareholders of General Electric and Comcast is none other than BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. So we tell ourselves this mythology that we invented, that we live in a system of free market capitalism or whatever, when the capital owners don't want Disney to be behaving this way. The capital owners would rather Paramount Pictures or Universal Studios be taking advantage of it, but we've created this fiction that the shareholders, the institutional gatekeepers, the people who are actually, instead of palace walls in old world Europe, now palace walls in the back of Park Avenue, in BlackRock's corner office, telling the entire American economy how to run. We need to fix that top down. These are fiduciary violations, they're antitrust violations. The use of state pension fund dollars constitutes a First Amendment violation. It's called compelled speech, when the government forces you to contribute money to a pension and then engages in political speech, and engages in political speech by giving it to BlackRock. But these are legal solutions that we can't just lull ourselves to sleep at night by saying the free market mantra 10 times before you go to sleep, and then pretend like that somehow solved the problem, waking up to the fact that the free market cannot fix what is not free to fix. I think there's a reasonable discussion to be had about breaking up BlackRock. Okay, it is a firm that cannot represent constituents who have, it's not that it's too big, it's that you can't be a good fiduciary to clients who have fundamentally different interests any more than you can be a lawyer in the courtroom arguing the prosecution and the defense in the same case. It's a fiduciary point, it's not just a big is bad point. That's the top-down solution. But it does take two to tango, okay? Why are people pulling that cord? It's easy to say it, but what is it in our nature that causes us not to? Because we can do the boycott thing and it'll last for all of a week, and then we go on with our lives and resubscribe. And it's the same question about, it's something that's innate in our human nature, right? It's easy to complain about the other. It's a lot harder to look in the mirror. What is it within each of us that causes us to want to bow down to the new master? It's the same thing when the Israelites were lost in the desert. They said they want to go back and be ruled by Pharaoh. It exists in each of us. It is an impulse to bend the knee and be ruled by a new class of ruler. And I think that's going to require a deeper cultural change. How are we going to invigorate that cultural change? There's no silver bullet. I do think leaders can make a difference. I do think in the political realm, there's an opportunity for the GOP to make a difference. The right kinds of leaders, starting at the top of the Republican Party, being able to lead a way that leads to a national revival. But it's not just in politics. It's leaders in churches. It's leaders in our private sector, CEOs who actually lead the people who work for them. Just because your employees ask for something doesn't mean that's actually what they want. It's like the equivalent of a baby that's asking for its pacifier when it's really just hungry for a bottle, right? You got to feed them what they actually need, not what they're necessarily crying for on a given day. That requires leadership in every sphere of our lives, whether it's politics or whether it's private sector leadership or whether it's even church leadership. And so I think it's got to be both. The top-down fixes, but also the bottom-up cultural revival that we're going to need. And at some point, those two forces are going to meet, and that's when we see our national revival.
Okay, well, Vivek, we're at our time limit, and we just want to thank you so much for your insight and coming up. And
Crop TV.